Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, so let's talk some Impact Wrestling, especially coming off of last night's Impact Wrestling on Access TV. We're only a couple of weeks away now, of course, from Slammiversary. We're now in the month of July, so we're as of right now, 15 days away, just over 2 weeks away from Slammiversary. So the build to Slammiversary continued last night. I do have some opinions on that. We're going to be speaking about a few other stories when it comes to Impact Wrestling, possible incoming to the company, certainly some people teasing matches, other people in the company. There's lots of news stories to get into. Let's start off with the main event last night because Team Callis defeated Team Dreamer. Now, the Impact World Champion and AEW World Champion and AAA Mega Champion Kenny Omega teamed up with the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson, to form Team Callis last night, and they took on Team Dreamer in a blockbuster Impact main event. Now, Team Dreamer consisted of Sami Callihan, Chris Sabin and Moose, but they fell short ultimately as the Good Brothers, yes, finally, the Good Brothers got a victory on Impact Wrestling. Now, I've spoken about this quite a few times recently. A bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. I mean, the record speaks for itself. The Good Brothers can't buy a win. They could not buy a win. You go back to all the way to March at Sacrifice, and they lose the Impact Tag Team titles, and they lose again to Finn Juice in April, and then they lose it Under Siege, and they lose it Against All Odds. It felt like every time the Good Brothers had a match, and mostly it was Kyle Anderson eating a pinfall and then ultimately losing. So finally, last night, they actually got a win. Yes, they actually got a win after hitting the Magic Killer on Chris Sabin. Now, it must be said, it took for Sabin's partner to ultimately turn on him in Moose. Of course, they are opponents at Slammiversary. Now, last week, of course, after being relieved of his duties as Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President, Don Callis goaded Tommy Dreamer into a six-man tag team match. Dreamer obliged, putting together a star-studded team. However, tensions between Sabin and Moose reared their ugly heads and ultimately cost Team Dreamer the match last night. Now, Sabin and Kyle Anderson, they kicked things off with Anderson dominating initial proceedings. Moose arrived a little late to the ring as Callihan tagged himself in, took out all three opponents. Kenny Omega threatened to walk out the show as they headed to a commercial break. But eventually, Sami Callihan got a hot tag. He gave a big comeback before the heels took over. Eventually, the rivalry between Moose and Sabin became too heated, and the heels began to take advantage of this, pinning Sabin and picking up a huge win to close out the show. We saw essentially what happened. Chris Sabin had a bit of a house on fire comeback. Moose tagged himself in while Sabin was in the corner. They did the classic, you know when two people can't coexist as the tag team, and then the babyface backs into a corner really close to the corner, starts leaning like this as if to say, come on, tag me. Moose tagged himself in, and Sabin goes, oh, why did you tag me in? He shoves Moose. Moose isn't happy by this. He tags himself back out. He leaves. You knew this was going to happen. This news was going to happen. Now, there was some stuff that happened also, because as Moose is leaving, as he's walking up the entrance ramp, you have Tommy Dreamer, of course, is at ringside, and he's saying, what you doing? Moose turns around, puts his finger right in Dreamer's face, says, leave me alone, get out my face. Don Callis takes advantage of this, shoves Tommy Dreamer into Moose. Moose turns around thinking Dreamer has shoved him, and Moose clocks Tommy Dreamer. And then at the end of the show, we have Don Callis and the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. They're all celebrating, as you can see on the screen there. You can't actually see in that picture that's on the screen right there. Right here, I'll get it right. But Moose is actually sort of lingering in the background, and that's how they close the show. I thought the main event was fine. As I mentioned, probably the right call. I think that's the right call. I don't think there's any reason for Sami Callihan to get any more victories than he's been getting recently. He beat the Good Brothers at Against All Odds. He's got numerous victories over, the Good Brothers or a team that's been endorsed by Don Callis or Kenny Omega recently. So I think that was the right outcome. The Moose Chris Sabin thing, look, I mean, I've been quite vocal about this on the channel, so this is nothing new. If you're watching this is nothing new. You know my feelings of it. That I do feel like maybe Moose could be involved in something just a bit more high profile. Maybe his time will come. I don't know. We get enough of, can they coexist? Right, we hear this all the time on WWE television at the moment, don't we? How can they coexist? It's Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. You're going to be tag team partners tonight because you're going to be opponents at the pay-per-view. You're going to be tag team partners tonight. Can you coexist? And of course, they never can. They never can coexist. Or you get the other side of it of they become tag team champions, but they're opponents. How does that work? How can opponents become tag team champions? And I hate both. I hate both aspects of that storyline. So look, they wanted to do a big main event this week. I totally get that. The whole can they coexist thing, though, it's a little bit like, I feel it's a bit passe. They could have done something a bit different. The whole build to Slammiversary this year it feels a bit strange, and maybe this is just me. You can let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below. I really appreciate everyone that takes the time to put comments on these Impact videos. We have a great discussion on it, so you can let me know how you feel about this. But as mentioned at the top of the video, Slammiversary's just over 2 weeks away. It's 15 days away as of recording right now. And it's Impact's biggest show of the year. I think last year, of course, it was Impact's biggest show of the year in terms of a buy rate, in terms of people that bought the show on Fight TV, in terms of the signings that came over, whether it was Eric Young, whether it was EC3, whether it was Heath, whether it's whoever. Motor City Machine Guns returning. It was Impact's biggest show of the year. It generated the most interest, generated the most revenue. And there was a feeling, and I think there still is a feeling, that it will be Impact's biggest show of the year once again this year. I don't know if I'm just not feeling it at the moment. I don't know if I'm just not feeling the momentum of Slammiversary. I'm excited and I'm curious to see who shows up. But in the same vein of last year's show had so many things to be excited about last year. And I just don't know if that's the same this year. Last year had all of the excitement of the former WWE stars or former Impact stars returning, debuting with the company. It also had a vacant World Championship match. It also had a mystery person in that championship match. It also had an open challenge by the Rascals to open the show. There was a lot of mystery around that event, and there was a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz. And 2 weeks out, have we still got the same buzz and excitement for this year's show? I think the answer is no. Again, and that's for me personally, and again, I'd love to know your opinion on this, but personally, that's just because some of the matches that have already been booked, they just don't do that much for me, to be honest. Or I don't think they're the best that Impact can really put on right now. Sami Callihan versus Kenny Omega, look, it's a good match. Callahan's an Impact guy. They've done their utmost best to build him up. He is a former world champion, and in the world of Impact Wrestling, he's a big deal, but I just don't know if I can properly buy into Sami Callihan beating Kenny Omega, especially in a one-on-one traditional wrestling match. I struggle with that one. And I know they tried to play it up last night on Impact that Omega might be a little bit scared of Callihan, or he backed off him a couple of times and all that kind of stuff. Again, I just don't know if I buy into that, And furthermore, you know the Good Brothers are going to be involved, so there's going to be a lot of interference, all that kind of stuff. Again, if Sami Callihan said, well, you've got your backup, I've got mine, and he brings out Ken Shamrock, then I would be maybe a little bit more interested, because I'd be interested to see the dynamic and all of that. But there just feels to be something missing. There just feels to be something missing about that story. I think they did a really good angle at Against All Odds. They ended Against All Odds in a hot fashion with the Callis firing thing, and now Don Callis has been fired himself, and Sami Callihan's been reinstated. I felt that was great, but I don't know. When I was watching Against All Odds, my thought process was this should be the Slammiversary main event. Kenny Omega and Moose, that's a Slammiversary main event, and I just don't know if I see that in Sami Callihan, Kenny Omega, and yeah, I can't really put my finger on it when it comes to the hype for Slammiversary. It just doesn't feel like it was there like it was last year. And that feels really odd to me, considering the opportunity that's available to Impact here. Considering there are arguably more names on the market than there were last year. There are bigger names on the market than there were last year. You've got arguably a better roster than you had last year if you're Impact Wrestling. You've got Kenny Omega in the main event. You've got a thriving Knockouts division. You've got some real exciting talent on that roster. And it just feels like 2 weeks out, I don't know, does Slammiversary feel like another event? Maybe that's too harsh. We do have fans returning, which I think I myself am very excited about. We do have those debuts that we know are coming, and those former WWE stars, and maybe some former Impact stars, maybe some New Japan stars as well appearing at it. That's exciting too, but I just feel like they could be doing more. And I look at this major storyline in Impact Wrestling right now, and I'm struggling to see the direction, and not in a good way, not in the way of this is really unpredictable, in the way that when you're 2 weeks out for an event and you're thinking, right, I'm struggling to see the story here. I get it, it's Kenny Omega, Sami Callihan, but Don Callis is fired, but he's still showing up because he's Kenny Omega's manager. Now Tommy Dreamer's involved, but he's not an authority figure, but he is because he's an Anthem representative, and Scott D'Amore isn't happy about that, but now Don Callis is frustrated because Tommy Dreamer was the one that fired him and he went over his head. It seems quite convoluted, and I don't know. For me, it's missing something. But the Moose and Chris Sabin match, again, as I mentioned, I think that there would be a better use for Moose. What that would be on the Impact Wrestling roster now, I don't know. There's no doubt in my mind the match is going to be good. I think both matches are going to be very good. Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan, I think is going to be excellent. Moose versus Chris Sabin is going to be excellent. Are they worthy of Slammiversary though? I don't think so. And the reason I say that is if those matches took place at, say, Impact Under Siege, you wouldn't really blink an eye. You'd go, oh, they're good matches, and then they go, but they're an actual Slammiversary. It's like the WrestleMania principle, right? If you're saying that Slammiversary is arguably this year, I know usually Bound for Glory, but Slammiversary this year is going to be Impact Wrestling's WrestleMania. Why would you have matches on there that you would do at, say, Payback? Because you would look at that and go, oh, that's a Payback card. That's my feeling on it. Now, I enjoyed the main event last night, but again, it feels like there's just something a little bit not there that I'm just not feeling. Again, and it might just be me. It might just be me. And if it's just me, you can let me know in the comment section below. That's what this channel's all about. It's all about, opinion, sharing opinion, all that kind of stuff when it comes to Impact Wrestling. But it just, I don't know. The one thing I did think was funny is when they came out and all four guys were wearing all four belts. You had Carl Anderson wearing the AEW World Championship. You had Doc Gallows wearing the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. You had Kenny Omega wearing the Impact Championship. You had Don Callis in 2021 wearing the AAA Mega Championship. Just you never thought you'd see that. You never thought you'd see that. You never thought you'd see Carl Anderson wearing the AEW World Championship, right? That in itself feels like a big deal in itself, doesn't it? Anyway, speaking of Slammiversary, speaking of next week, we do have something announced for next week as well, next week's show. Next week on Impact Wrestling, the Impact World Champion Kenny Omega and Sami Callihan will make their main event title match at Slammiversary official with a contract signing. Now, ever since Omega walked away with the World Championship in hand, Callihan has been gunning for a shot at the prestigious championship, hoping to bring it back to Impact Wrestling, of course. That's what they keep saying. We're going to bring it back to Impact Wrestling where it rightfully belongs. Now, this week, of course, fans, as I mentioned, caught a glimpse of what the match could look like as both men led their teams in a massive six-man tag team match. Now, although Callahan's team lost the match at the hands of the Good Brothers Magic Killer on Chris Sabin, neither Omega or Callihan were the ones that took the pin, so of course they still are protected. The only interaction these two had was Omega sliding out of the ring when Callihan was in it, and Omega keeping Callihan down towards the end of the match with a V-trigger on the apron. Callihan has preached that he is not the hero or / champion that the people want, but he's the one that they need. So the contract signing next week is going to be interesting. Once again, and I don't know if this is the case, so I can't tell you if this is the plan or not, but I would hope they did a similar kind of contract signing press conference deal that they did prior to Impact Rebellion, when you had representatives of both AEW and Impact there. I know that was slightly different because it was for both the AEW World Championship and the Impact World Championship, whereas this is just for the Impact World title. But at the end of the day, Kenny Omega and Don Callis are representatives of AEW, so I wouldn't be totally opposed to having Tony Khan show up there again. And Tony Khan was a part of this, right? The Impact Wrestling and AEW summits a couple of weeks ago. Tony Khan was almost vehement to say that, I don't want Sami Callihan in AEW, or we don't want to have Sami Callihan in an AEW arena and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't be opposed to having Tony Khan as part of that contract signing next week. Will he be a part of it? I mean, I guess he was at the tapings, right? I mean, I think so, because they taped Against All Odds, and all of this content is still taped, weeks ago at this point. So Maybe Tony Khan is a part of it, and if he is, I think that would be quite exciting as well. When it comes to contract signings in pro wrestling, are they overdone? Absolutely. They absolutely are overdone, and we're getting two outcomes next week. This is the way to look at it. You get contract signings that end in violence and someone going through a table, and that might happen next week. Or you get the other one that is just a straight-up contract signing. They sign the contract, they do a promo, they end the show, both guys walk away. I suggest it's probably going to be the first option there. Given that it's Sami Callihan, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe it's the Good Brothers come out and put Sami Callihan through a table, Magic Killer, and Kenny Omega stands tall and all that kind of stuff. Again, I know I spoke about this. I've spoken about this in depth on this video alone, so I'm not going to go too much back into it, but I just feel there are better matches to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Sami Callihan, and I really don't mean it as a disrespect to Sami Callihan. I don't, because I think he is very good at what he does, and he's an Impact Wrestling guy, and he's been around with Impact Wrestling for a long, long time. But if Kenny Omega's dropping the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary, is Sami Callihan really the right guy to put in that spot to beat Kenny Omega? I think the answer's no. And again, that's no disrespect to Sami Callihan. That's more of a mindset of you can make someone. And you've got someone on the roster like a Moose who has never won the Impact World Championship before. So surely wouldn't it make better sense for a person like a Moose to win his first Impact World Championship, given he's just re-signed for 2 years? Wouldn't it make better sense to give Moose that Impact World Championship victory on the biggest stage they possibly can in Impact, which is Slammiversary this year, in front of fans, on a big stage, on a big event? Doesn't that just make sense? And I guess all of it doesn't make sense. Why did they have the match at Against All Odds first? Is it because Moose's contract they thought was going to expire and they weren't sure if he was going to resign? I don't know. I don't know the answer to those questions. But again, I look at this match and I just go, it could be more. And look, I could be totally wrong. They might prove me wrong by having just the most unbelievable match at Slammiversary. And as I mentioned, I'm sure the match will be very good. And I'm excited to see it. But there's just something about this Slammiversary build that I'm not connecting with. And maybe I'm not the only one, by the way, because we know the ratings haven't been great for Impact. Not that that's, as a precise measurement as it would be for, say, WWE and AEW, because Impact's viewed on multiple different various streams, whether it's, television, whether it's Twitch, whether it's YouTube, whether it's whatever. But there does feel to be this intangible, I can't quite describe it. It's something's missing. Something's missing about Impact, and I can't put my finger on it. A couple of other things I want to talk about before we wrap things up. Deonna Purrazzo, Impact Wrestling Knockouts champion, has spoken openly about wanting to see former Knockouts champion Chelsea Green, or also known as Laurel Van Ness, return to the company. Now, Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo recently expressed her desire to see Chelsea Green appear in Impact Wrestling. Of course, Green was among several WWE performers who were released by the company on April 15th, 2021 this year. Since then, the former SmackDown star has teased a return to Impact a bunch of times on her social media handles. In the latest episode of Impact in 60, Impact aired some of the most memorable matches of Chelsea Green in the promotion, where she worked under the ring name Laurel Van Ness. Green tweeted how grateful she was to the promotion for showing immense faith in her. She said, quote, "The faith Impact had in me so early on in my career still blows my mind. Forever grateful." Replying to her tweet, Deonna Purrazzo shared a GIF that indicated how much she wants to see Chelsea Green return to Impact, saying, quote, "Come, come, come." Now, it's only, again, about 2 weeks before Chelsea Green can officially sign with any promotion, and we do know she has had talks with Impact Wrestling, as I've mentioned time and time and time again when it comes to the names possibly coming in and the surprises. We know that Impact has at least 2 surprises planned for Slammiversary, and we know, given the recent reports from Fightful Select, that there is going to be a reinvigoration of the Knockouts division over the course of the next few months, which means a lot of new names coming in. Chelsea Green's been rumoured, Mickie James, the Iconics, the list goes on and on of the names that have been rumoured to be returning to Impact. I've said from the start, if you had to push me and said, Owen, one name that you think is guaranteed to come into Impact Wrestling, for me, it's Chelsea Green. For me, it's Chelsea Green. We know they've had talks. That's been reported. I think, was that Fightful Select? So at least it was Fightful Select or PW Insider. Someone openly has said that Chelsea Green is talking to Impact. Scott D'Amore was very quick to point out, as soon as Chelsea Green was released, that she had a home in Impact. She's teased it multiple times. I think if you're a female wrestler today, and you want to compete at a high level, Impact Wrestling is the place to be. People like Deonna Purrazzo in that company, people like Jordan Grace, people like Rachel Ellering, people like Fire and Flavor. I mean, the list goes on and on of just top-tier talents that they have there. They've also got Gail Kim working behind the scenes. They've got Jazz working behind the scenes. They've got great names supporting that division. It's a cornerstone. It's a pillar of Impact Wrestling. And I think that Chelsea Green, I think it's inevitable that she returns. I really do. And I've said that time and time again. And I'm not really wavering on that one, to say the least. Finally, Josh Alexander has teased a possible match against Steve Macklin going forward in Impact Wrestling. Josh Alexander seems to be impressed with the progress Steve Macklin is making on Impact. Macklin produced another stellar performance on this week's show, and it seems to have caught the attention of the X-Division champion. In just his second match with the company, Steve Macklin squashed Manny Smith on the July 1st episode of Impact. The match further showcased Macklin's brutal side as he dominated his opponent with relative ease. And Josh Alexander tweeted to a clip of this on social media saying, quote, "Oh, I can have some fun with this one." Steve Macklin responded saying, "Be careful what you wish for, walking weapon." And this is quite interesting because Steve Macklin did an interview recently. I forget who it was with. It might be with the Sportster. We covered it here on the channel. He did an interview recently and he was asked, which opponents do you want to face in Impact Wrestling? Straight away he went, X-Division Championship I want to face Josh Alexander. And now that Josh Alexander's now coming out saying, yep, I want to face Steve Macklin, to me, is more than a coincidence. I don't think that's two guys going into business for themselves either. That, to me, says coming out of Slammiversary, I expect Josh Alexander to retain the X Division Championship at Slammiversary because he's going to have a lengthy reign with the title. That, to me, says coming out of Slammiversary, he's going to be the X Division Champion and he's going to be facing Steve Macklin, because that's fascinating, because that is not a traditional X Division Championship match. Traditionally, the X Division, people look at it as a cruiserweight division, which isn't fair because it's hybrid of styles. But people do look at it as a cruiserweight, high-flying stuff. And to see more, larger guys, ground and pound guys, obviously great amateur wrestling background in Josh Alexander, but Steve Macklin as well, again, more of a ground and pound guy competing for the X Division Championship, opens up a completely different avenue for that division and that championship. And that's really exciting. That's really exciting for me as an Impact fan. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go going forward. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash the like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.